Welcome to Interviews, hosted by Randy Goodman, Harvey Callis Real Estate, your real estate professional. Get to know our community, our businesses, products, and services that will elevate your life. Please welcome your hostess, Randy Goodman.
Hi, it's Randy Goodman from Harvey Callis Real Estate, and I am super excited to be here with the beautiful Kelly Morgan, who is a host of the BHP, which is the Brightheaded Patio book. And I can't wait to hear all about that. Thank you so much for being with me here, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I can't wait to learn all about you and share with our audience. So first, tell us about this patio book. Like, I've never heard that expression. I love it.
Okay, so let me tell you that a patio book is a book that's read on a podcast, right? So it's not an audio book, it's a patio book.
Love it. And how did that come about? Like, how did you come up with that?
I always wanted to be an author. So I always wrote stuff, right? But then life came crashing in. Kids, I didn't think I could make money as a writer, so I didn't really take it seriously. But right. I found myself a couple of years ago where I had time to write and I had a story in my head. So I wrote this story. And the thing was that this was going to be the best story ever. I was going to write this book. Somebody was going to publish it. And then I was going to be on book tour, 3 months later, right? That was the dream, but that's not what happened. What happened was I wrote this book. I started shopping it around, got a lot of no's, a lot of rejection. Finally found a publisher who's like, yeah, I can publish your book. I can sell it. You're such a great author. And he really gassed me up. And I'm thinking, oh my God, yes, finally, right? So he says, yeah, can do it. But you got to help us pay to get it published. You got to help us pay. So I ended up paying about $1,000 to get absolutely nothing. I never got a book, right? I never received even a book. And this all happened around COVID. So right when COVID hit, the book did launch on Amazon. Mm-hmm. But his excuse why I wasn't getting books, and I wasn't planning on selling my own books. I thought he was a publisher and that he would sell the books for me. But then he was like, have a book signing, Kelly, buy 100 books or whatever it was. And my daughter's like, yeah, Mom, do it. We can do it. So I bought these books, but I never received them. And he blamed COVID, right? Oh, my warehouse guy can't deliver because of COVID, right? And this went on for months. And finally, he just stopped returning my emails and returning my calls. And so I'm thinking this isn't going to happen. I was defeated, right? I'm done. This sucks. But then a couple of months later, I actually had to get the book back from them, right? Because it was still on Amazon. And it was on Amazon. And if the books was selling, I never knew because he had control of the book. So I never saw a dime from the book. It took me about 6 months to get the book back. I finally got it back. And then I was like, what am I going to do? So I thought, okay, I'll republish it. So I started Brightheaded Publishing. That's what Brightheaded means Kelly from Ireland, because it's an Irish name. So in Irish, Brightheaded means Kelly. So that's why it's called Brightheaded Publishing. So once I published it, that was the easy part. Once I figured out how to self-publish, got it done, now how am I going to market it? Who's going to buy this book, right? So I read this article that said, start a patio book. Read a chapter a week on your book on a podcast and, promote your book. And I thought, the light bulb came on. So that's how it got started, but that's not what happened. What happened was I was like, I have all this airtime. Gee, I should let other people come and promote their books too, right? That would be cool. Maybe they can read their book or whatever. And now I am interviewing authors for my PHB Patio Book Club. I run authors every Wednesday and every Saturday. And it's crazy because this is not what this started out to be.
Wow, that,
Right?
it's really original. It's really original. And I love that. And I never thought of doing that. I with all the books that I've done, I had the first book authors, the ones that wanted to, I had them read their chapters, right? But I never thought to like put them on a podcast. That's a great idea.
So that's how it started. And the funny thing is, so get this, as I'm reading my book on air with my niece who's reading with me and she's doing voices, I'm realizing that the book isn't edited right. It's not formatted right. There are things missing. I'm like, this is horrible. So I pulled the books back. The books are no longer for sale. They're no longer out there.
Okay.
Right? Because having this podcast, I've learned all about the editing process. I've learned about the publishing process. I've learned about marketing. I've learned about what other people have done. And I was thinking, how do I pass this information on? How do I stop somebody from going through what I went through? Because it really sucks when somebody takes your money and you get nothing in return and gasses you up and has no intention of doing anything that they say they're going to do. Right? That is, and then to lose your book, even for a little while, I don't know if the book is good or not. Let me put it this way, but it was my book. Right? And I wanted it back because I spent a lot of time on it. It was important to me.
Yeah.
And so now I have this book club and I've invited other authors to come on and let's talk about your book and let me help you promote your book and let's pass on whatever knowledge you've learned about self-publishing or trying to get an editor or trying to find a publisher or what you did. So maybe, just maybe, we can help one other person who's going down this same road that all these other authors I have found out have gone down. That is why I do the podcast.
I love that. What a great story. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So I understand what led you to do your podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business today and what you do?
My business, as far as like what I do for a living?
Yeah, and then is the podcast a business? Is it monetizing for you?
The podcast, I hope one day will monetize for me. It's not monetizing now. It's still relatively new. It's incredibly new. And so right now I've been out there really trying to market and promote the podcast. I hope one day it does monetize, but if it doesn't, that's okay too. I'm more interested in helping people than I am necessarily making money at this time. I would love for somebody to sponsor the podcast, right? That would be great. But I never have any interest in technically making money. I just want to help people promote what they're doing. And that gives me more satisfaction than promoting my own stuff, right? I think that's cool to help other people promote their book. As far as what do I do? Well, I work full time. So this is really kind of a side entrepreneurial hustle that I didn't plan on doing. I'm going to relaunch my books and I am going to put my books out there because I consider myself to be a published author helping other authors. So that's what I do.
Absolutely. And I'll be here to support you when you do. So you let me know when you're ready. Definitely support.
My book is going through editing. My book is going through re-editing. I decided to get it re-edited. And then I'm going to launch it again probably here in the fall. But in the meantime, I want to keep promoting other authors and build up the book club and really help this be a platform so that people will be like, if you want to really market your book, you need to come be on PHP, Audiobook Book Club, because they've got a far reach. So that's my goal.
I love that. You build your audience and you're adding value to people's lives at the same time. So you're really giving back to community here through what you're doing, which is a beautiful thing. So thank you for doing that. And I know the feeling that you get from this, because it's why I do what I do, because I get a lot of mental income I coined it mental income.
That's a good
because,
term.
because thank you, because it just makes you feel good. Like
Yeah.
it just brings so much value to you, and you don't do it for that reason, but it keeps you going because it feels good, right? So
Well, and people are so appreciative, right, for the opportunity. They're so excited to speak with me, which is kind of weird because I'm like, this is not what this started out to be. When I started this podcast, I wasn't thinking about anybody else but myself, and I'm going to promote my book.
right.
And if you go to the podcast, there are probably 14 chapters of my book that are out there on the podcast, and I'll leave them out there. Why not?
Yeah.
You know, my niece was doing the voices, and so I thought, you know, this is cool. We could really do something with this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Who knows where it will go? I've decided that I'm just going to go with the flow. When I started the podcast, I told myself that I was going to listen to the voice in my head, and I was going to just do what it said, and it said, put your book on the podcast. Okay, so let's see what happens. And this is what has happened.
And I can totally see this turning into this incredible business for you, where, you know, who knows what's happening down the road, but I totally see that, because it's already morphed from you looking at it, you know, small time basically, where I'm just going to promote my own book and read my chapters and put it out there. And now it's morphed into like all these authors coming on board, and now helping the authors, helping them become indies, helping them, you know, make it a smoother transition, and sharing the know-how and the knowledge so they don't have to make the same mistakes everybody else made, right?
Well,
And
the goal would be to take Brightheaded Publishing and really start to publish others besides myself. I am the only published author at Brightheaded Publishing. But
Right.
before I take on somebody, I have to learn,
Yeah.
right? I have to learn what publishing is, and that the publishing industry is not anything what I thought it was going to be. I really thought it was one way, and it's a completely different way.
And you should also check your government, because they may have grants and programs in place for indie publishers, because I know in Canada we do. So you guys might have something as well.
That's a good idea. That's
Yeah,
a
you should
really good
check into
idea.
that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would be the goal. That would be the you know, that's where I would love to see it go, but that's not how it started.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
kind of going with it.
Which is awesome. Like, go with the flow. And it's already morphing into all kinds of amazing things. So good for you. And I can totally see the publishing part becoming a huge part of your business as well. But so we know how this transition happened, but how did the whole wanting to write a book in the first place begin for you? Like, did you dream as a child that you were going to start writing books and sharing stories? How did this come about?
I always wrote stories as a child, right? And I loved stories, and I loved movies. And knowing that somebody wrote that, right? Somebody wrote that movie that you love so much. And I'm thinking, that's kind of cool to be able to like write that and then be able to have people see what you see, right? That it takes a talent. And so I remember being even in high school writing plays and soap operas. And so I always thought that I would write a screenplay, right? Because I could just see, I would see my story in my head. And I thought, ooh, that'd be just so cool if I could take the story and put it on film. I always wanted to be a published author. I just didn't know how to do it. And then as I wrote the book and tried to become a published author, I found out that this is really hard, right? And you have to really be able to deal with rejection, which was hard to keep going, to get no's all the time. To think what you wrote is worthy of print is a big deal to a lot of people, right? And so when somebody says no, no, no after no after no, then, you know, you think, okay, I'll self-publish. But again, I didn't know the industry, and self-publishing kind of had a negative stigma to it, you know, from what I knew about publishing,
Right.
which wasn't anything, right? So I always wanted to be a writer. I just didn't know how to do it. And then when I thought I knew how to do it, it didn't work out at all. Right? It was nothing like I thought it was. My hopes were dashed into a million little pieces. And I really had to pick myself back up. I mean, I probably wallowed in my sorrow for about 3 months before I decided to just try again. And then when I tried again, here's the podcast, and I learned all this other stuff. So I pulled the books back again. I pulled the books back again because I have realized in speaking with other authors and people like yourself in my podcast, whatever you put out there on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever, that's your legacy. That makes you immortal. That will always be out there.
Yeah.
So you want it to be the best possible work that it could possibly be, knowing that everybody's not going to like it, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing that you might get a negative review or two, but they can't say that it's not good because you didn't spend the time to get it edited, right? I don't want bad reviews because it's formatted poorly. If you don't like the story, you don't like the story. But I want to put the best possible work I can out there to my ability as an author. And maybe somebody will like the story because I'm a firm believer, and there's a listener for every podcast, and there's a reader for every book.
Absolutely. I love that. So what are your goals for the next year or so?
Oh, that's such a good question. So my goals are to keep doing the podcast and trying to increase the audience, figure out different ways to market it and promote it. My goal is also to launch my book. The book is called Wait For It. So I'm relaunching it. And it's a novella. It's about 50,000 words. It's not a long book, but it's a book of fiction. But it's something very close to my heart. It's Wait For It. It's a play on word, WEIGHT. Wait For It. So that will launch later this year. So that's a goal that I have. And I would really love to be able to have a broader listener base. How I do that, I do not know. I have not figured that out. I totally believe it's possible. But it can be, it's work, right? It can be challenging. So those are my goals. I really want to keep the podcast going, and I want to be able to help more people.
Do you have your podcast on all the popular podcast stations?
I do. Yep. Okay. Spotify, Apple, just all of them. So yeah, we're even on YouTube. So you can go and see the audio on YouTube. And maybe one day I'll go to video. That's another thing that I'm thinking about with the podcast. I think that people will like that as well. But I'm not there yet, right? So, when I started doing a podcast, I didn't even know how to do a podcast, right? So I had to figure that out.
Yeah, I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you. Yeah, it's everything's a learning curve, and if you don't start, it isn't going to happen. So you got to start. And who cares if the first ones are not so wonderful? You just keep going. You get better and better as you go, right? I remember my first one. A friend of mine interviewed me. It is so amateur, but if you go on my podcast site, or if you look me up on iTunes, Spotify, wherever, and you listen to the very first one, you're like, oh my God.
Yes, you get better though. You get better.
A few hundred later, right? It's a totally different story. You're so comfortable with it, and just smooth, and it's a conversation, and I love it. So yeah, and thank you for having me on yours, because
you're welcome. And you know what? You get better. And I have learned that my podcast has been the first for a lot of people, right? So you have to kind of make them comfortable. It's okay. It's just me and you having a conversation. And I love it. I love to see people, to be the first, because, this is just one of many that you will do as you go out there and market and promote yourself and your book and your brand or whatever it is you're going to do.
Exactly. So do you have any tips or suggestions for people? And this can be about anything that's resonating with you right now.
I do. My tip to you is Absolutely do not give up on whatever it is you are doing. Whether that you're starting a business, you're going back to school, you're starting a podcast, whatever, a YouTube channel, whatever. Do not give up. It's going to be challenging. There's going to be good days. There's going to be bad days. There's going to be days that you think that maybe nobody listens and nobody may not care about it but you. But if you care about whatever it is you're doing, it will have value. Believe me, it will. And people will notice, and it will have value for them too. But you have to believe in it first. So that's my advice. Do not give up, because I tell myself that every day. And always be grateful for what you have.
Absolutely. I love that advice. Thank you very much. So
you're welcome.
How can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of you, but also, okay, I think we know where to find you, where to find your podcast, so we can share that. But how do you want people to reach out to you?
Okay, so if you are somebody who you think you'd be a good fit for the podcast, you have a book, and even if you haven't published your book, right, and you're thinking you want to come on and talk about it, yeah, let's talk about your book. Hit me up, email me, that's the easiest way, brightheadedpublishing@gmail.com. I am on Instagram at BHPLCC. I am on Twitter they call me Headed Bright on Twitter. I am on Facebook. I have 2 pages on Facebook. There's Brightheaded Publishing, and then there's BHP Audiobook Book Club. And you can also get me on LinkedIn at Brightheaded Publishing. And there's a YouTube channel, Brightheaded Publishing. So it's all Brightheaded Publishing. I do have a website. I am working on it. It's up. I haven't really, I hate to admit it, I just haven't done a lot with the website, but I am working on it, and I'm trying to figure out which way I'm going to go with it. So soon, it's there, but it's not what I want it to be. So don't pay any attention to that right now. Go to the other ones. Come back in about 60 days for the website, which will be brightheadedpublishing.com.
Okay, perfect.
Just saying.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for being on with me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. You know what? I will say, this is the first for me. Nobody's interviewed me, so this is fun for me. Yeah, it's the first. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I'm excited to be the first. So thank you again, Kelly, for being on and for doing what you're doing to help so many people. We're definitely going to support you and help share and get you out there.
Yeah, go listen. You can listen to some great authors.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this interview hosted by Randy Goodman. We hope you will take action and connect with the incredible business people and leaders in our community. And remember, Randy is always here to answer any questions you have regarding your real estate needs. Be sure to register on the website and stay up to date on what's happening in your area at parkbench.com/millpond.